Did you know that despite making up 50% of sellers, women hold just 30% of the sales leadership roles? It's not a pipeline problem. That's a promotion problem. Welcome to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast, where we make the new rules of success for high-performing women in sales. And I'm your host, Amy Evans, sales leader turned executive coach. After 25 years in the trenches at Salesforce, EDP, and startups, I now help ambitious sales managers step into second-line leadership roles. If you are ready to lead with authority, earn what you're worth, and make a bigger impact, you are in the right place. Click follow so the next episode will be waiting for you. Today, we are diving into a topic that every sales leader should care about, which is building a personal brand that accelerates your career, opens doors, and makes you unforgettable, both inside and outside of your company. And today, my guest is someone who lives and breathes this work. Jenny Beres is the co-founder and president of Pink Shark PR, a Los Angeles-based PR agency that champions female leaders in fintech and other innovative industries. She's sales obsessed and has personally sold millions of dollars worth of PR services, which is amazing, and has trained female leaders how to leverage their stories to generate 6 and 7 figures, raise VC capital, and finally get comfortable with visibility and sales. Jenny, I'm so excited to have you here.
Amy,
Thank you
thank
for
you
joining.
so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you and to your lovely audience.
Yes, beautiful. All right. Well, let's get started with the big picture.
Right.
Before we talk tactics, I know that you believe building a brand really starts from the inside out, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So why is owning your personal brand so critical for women in sales leadership, especially in male-dominated spaces?
So I think that's a really interesting question. And I think, especially in the era that we're in, I talk about a lot, I talk a lot about this in PR because people will think that there is like a timer on when they start and stop their branding, when they stop and start their PR efforts. But the reality is, you already have a brand, you already have a public persona. And the question is, do you want to control it or do you want the internet to control it? There is no world in which you go from having zero brand or zero identity, or even if, let's say, you have a business that you haven't done a whole lot of PR or marketing around, that business still has a public identity. It's just that the internet and Google and the algorithms control it. And it is so critical that we control our own story. There is so much out of our control. There's so much that we would love to control that we absolutely cannot. But how we're perceived, how we leverage our story, how we use our founder's story and our strengths and the challenges that we overcame to benefit our business, that is within our control. And it's an area that we do better than the boys, much better than the boys. And so we should use it to our advantage.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that you say that we do it better than the guys do.
Do.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I'm curious about, like, when you look at what women are doing, what are some of the mistakes that you see being made when it comes to owning that, and you talked about controlling your brand. Like, what are some of the things that you see people that, maybe you shouldn't be doing this, and how could you fix that? What would you say there?
Sure. So I think visibility in general is a really big issue, and being objective about our own strengths. I'll give you an example. So when I talk to a new client, and I work with a lot of lovely men as well. I have a role that I work with lovely humans across the board. I champion obviously women, but if you're a lovely human, I will consider you. When I sit and talk to my male clients, and I ask them, what is wonderful about you? What is special about you? What is newsworthy about you? They have no problem telling me they go right back to the beginning. They go straight back to kindergarten, school, what their moms say about them. Like it's almost like Hollywood scripted, and they're so confident to tell you that. And the truth is there's nothing wrong with that. On the flip side, when I talk to a female founder or a woman who is getting used to putting her name out there and getting more recognized for her accomplishments, she could have an Ivy League degree, she could have had three super successful businesses, two successful exits, whatever it is, and she looks at me like deer in the headlights. Well, I don't know. I don't think there is something special here. I'm not sure. And I just want to shake her. And the issue there is we have to knock that off. And one of the ways that I really feel like I have been able to help female founders kind of get out of their head about visibility, which I think is like the number one thing here, is by saying you can't actually be objective then about where you do need to improve or where you do need to pivot in business or soft skills or whatever that is, if you can't also own where you're a genius. If you can't be objective and honest about where you are amazing, then you are never going to be objective and honest about where something needs help. And so we have to take a step back and start giving ourselves the objective, like we have to hype girl ourselves objectively. Like, yes, I'm so great at this, and this is where I do need some help. And I think when you can look at it objectively, it becomes easier than to say, yeah, I am awesome at this, and I'm going to own that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, okay, so that's all easy to say, I think. And
Sure.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about how, in my own life, and this has been like pervasive, and almost every woman that I've worked with deals with this, where it's like this. I think it might be called this, I might get it wrong, but I think it's called like high achiever syndrome or something like that. It might not be syndrome, it's something. It's like we're, even though the achievements are there, like the receipts are there,
Sure.
and nobody could argue with those facts, we get into this place where we just don't give ourselves credit and still hold ourselves to just this, like, you know, so high of a standard to be unable to recognize what we are doing and what we have done, which is what it sounds like you just talked about. I mean, that's what I
Sure.
heard. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, I think that.
Hey, quick break for a second. If you are a sales leader who is ready for your next step up, and I'm talking about leading other sales leaders, becoming a director, a VP, even a CRO, then this is for you. I'm hosting a free workshop. You can grab your spot at amyevanscoaching.com. This is for sales leaders who are in tech and are wanting to land jobs where you can earn anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million a year. And again, you can grab your spot at amyevanscoaching.com. Okay, back to the show.
I think that's interesting. And I think that that's where radical self acceptance comes in. Because if you are looking to fill any type of emotional hole with achievement outside of yourself, you will forever be that dog chasing the hot dog on the string.
Oh, yeah.
So I am a very high achieving person.
Hmm.
My business is very successful. My previous business was very successful. I have a lot of things that I am tangibly very, very proud of. And I also don't care. I also I also do not care. If I didn't achieve anything else beyond this, I would like myself just as much. I
Hmm.
would still think that I was super cool.
Mm.
Um, and I think when you're younger, you kind of go through trial by fire a little bit. There was certainly a time where I had extreme situations, interpersonal situations with groups or bullying or things that really, really pressed how I was going to develop as a human. When I was 18, I had a horrendous case of chickenpox. I was hospitalized.
Oh my
We were
gosh.
talking about little brothers before this. My little brother gave me chickenpox, and I didn't have the vaccine because my doctor had assumed a pediatrician had given me so nobody thought I was a risk for chickenpox. And when I came out of the hospital, it looked biblical. I was an 18-year-old girl who was very like all 18-year-old girls. You want to look pretty, you want to have nice skin, all this stuff. And I looked biblical. It was huge holes in my face. I had to have multiple surgeries to correct the
Oh my
damage.
gosh. Oh, I'm so
And
sorry. Ugh.
oh, that's okay. It was actually good for me because I remember my mom dragged me out of the house after I was feeling a little better, and I didn't want to go anywhere because I was like, I am ugly. Like I am full blown ugly. And she said, you have to leave. Like you have to leave the house. So we went up the street to Applebee's, and the server said, "What do you want to drink?" And I said, "Do you want to know why I look like this?" Like it was compulsive. And that experience, among some other things, made me realize that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy. You don't have to be perfect to have a good life, you don't have to achieve to be worth something. That those inner reserves are far more powerful than anything that we could create, make, earn, look like, whatever that is. And so I think that moment started my journey into I want to achieve because I want to, but it does not mean anything about me.
Mm. Yeah, you just started to get into an area of like identity tied to achievement and the separation of that and how that separation gives you access to really self-love and acknowledgement of how amazing you are. Yes, you've done all these things in your life, but that doesn't define you because there's all this other stuff about you that you're amazing anyway, right? And surviving and getting through everything, whether it was an illness at high school, like you had, that was devastating and had all of this repercussion for you and how you felt about yourself and how you looked. And these are the things that really can allow us to gain more access to freedom. And what I notice is that when I did that, because I didn't have an illness that created that for me. It was more about when I was laid off from a very big job that I had with a very well-known top software company in a top sales position, executive sales leader role. And Jenny, I'd never not had a job. I was, since I was 14. And so that time period of going through that, layoff, like the grief of losing my team and all these people that I loved working with. But then there was all this internal facing stuff that began, which were these looks within myself of who am I without my work? Who am I without a title? Who am I without making XYZ amount of money every year? Right? Who am I? And it forced me to go on a really introspective journey and come up with who I really am. And, who I am is somebody who's committed to making a difference in the world and being a force for positive energy, joy, growth, and integrity.
Yes.
And that's what my life is about. And I try to bring that to every single area of my life. But it's so hard to get access to that when you're just going through, like getting through every single
Yeah.
day. And that's where the challenge, I think, really comes in. And so, unless you can go through some sort of big formative, huge transformational change like you and I did that got us access to that, where else could you start to, as a founder or a leader or an entrepreneur, like really start to find your way into that self-value and self-worth? Where would be some like tactical, practical things to start to get access there, do you think?
I really like that. And it's funny because we're talking to a group of, ambitious women who love to sell. So I want to say care less, sell more. That's sort of how if you want to make more money, you have to learn how to relax. You have to learn how not to hold on so tightly. I think one tactical tool, and I'm sure everybody is so sick of hearing about it, but everyone has to come to meditation in their own way. But I think that quiet, reflective meditation is so important. I dabbled with meditation for several years. and it never really stuck because I am, I'm pretty high energy. The idea of just sitting there sort of stressed me out. And I think it just wasn't the season for that. But as you build your company, as you build your business, there is a grounding and a rooting that needs to take place. You have to be rooted in the day to day. Business sways, you have extreme highs and you have extreme lows. And you have to be able to stay moderate about all of it, almost flatline about all of it. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I had moved here because I had optioned a screenplay with James Gandolfini's company at the time. And I was working, my writing partner was a famous rock star who we kind of met, serendipitously. We ended up writing this script. And I was very excited. Every time we got an update, I was so excited. And he was never excited. He was just sort of chill about everything. And it really pissed me off because I'm like, dude, this is cool. And you are not acting like it's cool. Are you too cool for this?
Man, why doesn't he care? Yeah.
And he said, I've been in this business, adjacent music, but I've been in this business a long time. And the best thing that you can ever do is just stay middle ground about all news. Good
Mm,
news, bad news, in between news, just stay even keel. And so I feel like that is a very meditative response. And so it'd be a few years until I actually started to realize that meditation grounded me into myself. It helped expand what I have the bandwidth to handle. It improved patience. It improved my ability to people, and I deal with a lot of people every single day. And so I think that while a lot of people get sick of hearing, oh, just meditate, a quiet walk where you're taking in your surroundings mindfully, where you are noticing what's around you, where you're letting yourself concentrate on just that present moment, that counts as meditation. It's something
yeah.
as simple as that. But I do think that everyone has to find their own inspired way into it because, if you're not, if you don't, you're like, yeah, yeah, meditation.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, me too, is what I'm going to say. It took me a long time to like get on board with it and practice. This is why they call it practice,
Yes.
right? Is that there's all you do is practice. And so all the things you just described, I have absolutely found as a founder, of a business are working and so powerful. And I guess, where we got going on that to try to get it back to where we were. But where we got going on that concept was this getting so into your head and unable to slow down and really acknowledge yourself for what you've done
Yeah.
and what you've accomplished, and getting access to that is really, you offered a tool like that. Meditation is a pretty good vitamin to take on any given day, and there's a reason for it, and that it gets you access to what's really going on. And
Yes.
when you're looking at what's really going on, then you can start to get into claiming that story, that brand. So, when I think about one of the challenges that I've seen so many, I coach executive sales leaders on how to tell their stories and do it in a way that is compelling for, job opportunities, promotions, and either promotions or opportunities outside their current company. When you think about when women can kind of start to step forward and shape themselves into their brand and claim their things that they're a genius at, the next step to me is like really learning how to communicate it in a way, like a story that sticks, a story that resonates, a story that someone can hear you tell, and that can then be retold when you're not sitting in the room, you know? What would you say is a simple way that leaders can start to shape that story so that it lands and
Yeah.
and stays in the person who receives their story?
Yeah. So I think the first thing we have to do is because we tend to think about ourselves as our authentic self and as our professional self. And there is really no difference. I think instead of trying to make a brand fit us. Our brand, it should be reversed. It should be we are already the brand, and then we just pick out what is appropriate in that moment for us to share. I think that we have to ditch kind of like that LinkedIn voice that we do for everything. Because that sort of just makes everybody's eyes glaze over. And, every good story, you have to think of yourself as the hero of your story, obviously. And every good story has a really great challenge. And I always ask, my founders, what is something that was so brutal, like so brutal that you can almost laugh about it now? Like you can almost laugh about something that happened to you or something that you overcame that is really a critical part of your story. I like to use parts of the story that obviously we've already solved. If somebody is actively going through something, I don't I don't have them put that story out there because you don't want to bombard your audience and professional and potential clients or employers with messy personal details. People don't like messy unresolved details. They like the tea if it has a nice button on it at the end. So I always ask, what was like the biggest challenge, and with founders, uh we're a little crazy for doing this, this.
There is a certain amount of certifiableness involved. Yes.
It's not. So if you're doing this, you probably have a really good reason why. Either personal, professional, a little mix of the above. And so I like to dig into where was that challenge? Why is it almost funny now at this point? And how can we leverage that into where you are today?
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I think about the stories that I've told, when I've gotten promotions and hired for different roles, they were the challenge, overcome challenge stories, every single one of them. Um, Nobody really cares to hear about a winner. Like you walk into a situation where everything's going great and you just make sure that it doesn't go to hell.
Yeah. Yes.
You know?
Basically.
Yeah. Yeah. What's more intriguing and interesting and telling is the when things were the wheels were off and how did you get the wheels back on while you were driving the car around the
Yes.
track and and what's almost always present, or at least I know is was present for me, is like a lot of really deep self-learning that happened in those processes, like going through that experience, like what you're really capable of. And what almost always is revealing is that you're capable of more than you
Yes.
give yourself credit for.
Yes. And there's such a reward at the end of that because, being a business owner, you do, like I said, you experience the super highs, the super lows, things that really mentally push you, a little bit to the brink. But then when you come on the other side of it, you have this confidence that you did not have before, that you realize that nothing can really mess with you. Like you really are unshakable. And no external event, with the exception of like, the world exploding is going to rock you. Like you can come up with any solution. You can find your way out of any challenge. And one of the reasons I always loved sales, like as a young entrepreneur, and I mean really young, I was waitressing and then I started cold emailing tech companies. And that's how I started my first business as a copywriter. I looked at those cold emails. I looked at that as a winning lottery ticket that just didn't have a date on it. So as long as I kept going and I kept improving and I did not stop, I was going to get to cash that ticket in. And so that's how that played out for me then. That's how that's played out for me 20 years later. And I think that when you pair that activity with growing confidence, there really isn't anything that can mess you up as long as you don't stop.
Mm. Oh my gosh. That's powerful. Absolutely. And true, by the way. Because whenever we're facing a new challenge, where do we go? We look in the library, we look in the well. What did I
Yes.
do last time things were hard?
Yes.
I've faced all these challenges and gotten through them. this is how I know I'm going to make it, and how I'm going to navigate being in a new role, how I'm going to navigate turning around this underperforming team or company, or navigating a really challenging economic environment for those
Yeah.
entrepreneurs that are out there right now. And that's not just affecting entrepreneurs, affects us all, of course. So I can appreciate that for certain. One of the things that I think can be a reality is not all leaders are extroverts, and even more so, not all leaders are really great at coming across as really promoting themselves,
Sure.
and toot your own horn, brag, whatever you want to call it. So how can women start to really share their wins and those triumph stories without feeling disingenuous about it?
I think that's where objectivity comes in play again, because bragging and sharing your stories are not synonymous. They're not the same thing. And of course you don't want to be obnoxious. Nobody buys from someone that's obnoxious. Nobody wants to work with somebody who is obnoxious. But authentically connecting and sharing your stories and sharing where you could help. So, going back to a very, very young me who had a lot more energy than a little bit older version of me,
I
I
don't buy
always,
it.
I needed to settle down a little. It's okay.
Okay.
It was enthusiasm that I led with. Even when I didn't have the experience, I came up with this idea while I was waitressing that I was a great writer and I was going to leverage that into a business. I've always wanted a business. I actually treated my tables at the restaurants I worked at as my clients. So they could never fire me because I didn't follow the rules of the restaurant, but the customers liked me. So it was a real strange predicament that I got myself in.
Excellent.
And I never was like, I really couldn't, I really had no proof that I could do the job 20 years ago. But I reached out anyway and I said, I'm excited about what you're doing. I see an opportunity to use, and I was very honest. I have raw talent and no experience. You're still going to have to pay me because I don't work for free, but it's not going to be as much as someone who is more experienced. Why don't you take a chance on this? And people really responded, especially founders. They really responded to the enthusiasm. And and we all know, we've all worked, with teams who had been at it a long time. And sometimes when you're working with someone who's a seasoned, veteran at their job, there's a certain level of cynicism that comes with it, or worse, this is how it's done. This is how we do it. And so in a lot of ways, for my first batch of clients, I was a fresh pair of eyes that didn't know anything, just had new ideas and could string some sentences together. And so my point in saying that is that in nowhere did I brag, and I couldn't brag. I had no experience, but I led with what I really genuinely liked about them, what I was genuinely excited about. My real superpower in business and life and all of that, it's not that I'm exceptionally smart. It's not that I'm exceptionally like whatever. It's that I can get excited about anything. I can see my way into anything and find what has merit, what's like what is like makes me enthusiastic about it. I can see where things shine. And that has, and I meet people who are very much the opposite. For some reason, they only have the things that they like. They're very close minded. I only read these types of books, or I don't like these types of movies. We walk around in life forming our identity with a lot of proclamations about what we like and what we don't like. I don't do any of that. If it's cool, I don't care what it is. We could be talking about the Queen of England or plumbing. I will find my way into it if there's something interesting about it. And I think that's the real sales superpower. So you don't have to worry about bragging as long as you can genuinely find a way to get excited.
Yeah. Well, I feel that, because when I think about like the true stories, and everybody has true stories of overcoming challenge and obstacles, and all it takes to get access to that is to like just sit down for a second, and get out dust off your dusty old resume, or go peek at remind yourself from your LinkedIn profile, like where you've worked over however many years, and jot down, like, this was the challenge.
Yes.
Here's what I did. Here's what happened as a result. And the what you did part is where you really, I believe, have to give yourself a lot of license to accept what you did that was unique. That, people might have told you no, it couldn't be done. You might have had to fight through approvals to get somebody to get on board with doing some crazy idea that you had. A little bit of self-experience speaking here. You know, right? And then ultimately, the crazy idea worked. It worked, and it produced results. But giving yourself credit for that, and not aw shucks saying, and oh, everybody does this and I'm
Right.
not special, right?
It's
That's the
insufferable. No one likes that.
right.
Don't be
Well,
insufferable.
it's that balance of, like, the humility of a leader that's not pounding their chest and saying it's all about me, look at me, but also that strength of a leader to say, I did these things and I'm
Yeah.
proud of them.
Yeah.
And I I feel comfortable sharing about them because they formed me and they informed my leadership and who I am.
Yes.
So, one of the things that I'm going to shift gears into, like, visibility, because we've covered story. And I think one of the things that's very challenging, that I know is challenging because I experienced this myself, is getting visibility. And you talk about being findable.
Yes.
Um, what does that look like for entrepreneurs, founders, sales leaders, executives of any flavor? Tell me more.
Yeah, so I do talk about being findable because people can't fund you, they can't support you, they can't buy from you, they can't engage with you, they can't partner with you, they can't do any of the above if they cannot find you. And I think it doesn't have to be, I think that we get on these bandwagons, everybody is over on Instagram, then they're over on TikTok, then they're, picking back up with LinkedIn or whatever it is. Then they decide to do some media, whatever it is. It's not about the modality. It's about where you're the most comfortable being yourself, sharing, your opinions, your thought leadership, your genuine stories, and so I think one of the visibility is already very difficult for women in general. But then we get in our head about, well, then how should we do it? And then we want to do it perfectly. And then we
Mm-hmm.
want to do
Oh,
all the
yeah.
things. So, okay,
Oh
so
my gosh.
we're going to have our Instagram, our TikTok, our LinkedIn. And then what happens is they're all half abandoned graveyards of mediocre content. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to pick what is authentic. What do you really enjoy doing? So I don't love, other than shopping, I don't care for Instagram. I never, I don't, I'm not a photographer. I am not really into artificially positioning things to make my life look perfect. It's not, I'm kind of a messy person. I move fast and I'm a messy person. And it's so I don't force myself to try to go over there and be visible on Instagram. It's a graveyard on Instagram. I mean, you can look me up on Instagram. I haven't posted, in ages. But LinkedIn, I feel very comfortable on. I learned LinkedIn when I was very young, when I was in my early 20s. I felt that for me, because LinkedIn is not a heavy visual medium, I also made a lot of organic, authentic connections there. I liked being able to weigh in on business topics. I liked being able to weigh in with other PR professionals, other salespeople. I think now I am, I'm not going to be the cobbler with the terrible shoes. I'm starting to put the messages that I care about more into the world. So looking at, okay, what does PR look like for me? That feels very organic. you're never going to be visible where you're not comfortable. And so you don't have to go with where the wind blows. Pick what you like. I mean, it could be Facebook, whatever it is, it has to be where you feel like you're the most comfortable and what feels like the path of least resistance to start sharing, communicating, engaging.
Mm. Oh my gosh. Well, it's so funny. We have so much in common, Jenny. I'm not active on any other social media except LinkedIn, and that's it. Like, I feel awkward when I'm somewhere else. And by the way, the algorithm, whenever I do like dust off and decide to like go diving into one of those apps, they
Yeah.
don't know. It's so funny. I've been gone for so long. The app doesn't know who I am. The app sometimes thinks that I am a man. Sometimes, oftentimes thinks I'm a man with ADHD. I'm just going to tell you right now. I'm like, I
That
don't know
is
how
so,
you feel.
so funny.
The algorithm is whatever it is, but LinkedIn is where it's at. And then I think what can be challenging on LinkedIn, because I run my business on LinkedIn now. It's where I find my people. It's where they find me, and I've dabbled with LinkedIn for a long time. And I think what felt so awkward about LinkedIn at the beginning is this, like, what do I say? What do
Yes.
I have to say? And
Yes.
beyond that, it's like, what do I feel safe to say? Because when
Yes.
you're working for a company and it's not your own,
Sure.
then there's this worry that, uh, first off, there's this worry that you actually think they're looking at your posts, which I would gonna offer. I don't think they really are, but I could be wrong.
I'm
Uh,
not I have not seen that. I do not see a lot of I agree with you. They're not looking that closely.
No, they're not. They're not. But when I notice, like, there are some leaders out there that work for corporate organizations, and some of them are hot, some of them are CEOs, some of them are VPs of sales, some of them are CROs. These people are posting almost every day, and they're using it as a way to generate business and
Yes.
awareness, and it's a
Yes.
recruiting tool for them.
Yes.
So, um, when I think about, if I were back in my shoes of corporate America and I was worried about what I was going to post, what what would you suggest would be some creative ways to still build a personal brand on LinkedIn? Some ways to kind of like dip the toe in the water for for leaders in corporate America still, and then for entrepreneurs, you know, you know, they there should be no constraints for entrepreneurs in my mind, but give me some feedback on those.
So, obviously for leaders who are still employed in corporate America, you really have to understand your colleagues. I think that this is an instance where I think we have a gut feeling of what our CEO is going to like versus not like. We have most of you guys have been held hostage in enough meetings to know, what the personality is and what's going to be acceptable. That does not mean that the company owns your personal voice, but that does mean, thinking about, would you feel comfortable if you were having at a company dinner, would you feel comfortable sharing that with your colleagues? If you would not feel comfortable sharing whatever you're going to say with your colleagues, with your CEO, with whoever signs your check, probably should not write it. But I think that that's easier because we actually do know what our boundaries are at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that if we really sat back and thought about it, we'd be like, oh, maybe Sam won't really like that. We kind of already internally know. That is one area though that I think that PR for executive teams is really powerful because, my clients definitely have several executives, on board. And when you're doing PR, they all get to shine in a very professional company approved light. They're all writing their different op-eds, they're all giving different commentary to Forbes or to whatever niche journals. And then earned media is a great thing to use on social media. It's actually kind of a no-brainer to use on LinkedIn and social media. So I find that if you're working for a corporation, and you're not involved with whatever PR team that they have, get involved with whatever PR team they have, because that
Mm.
will make your social media much easier. Most big organizations have PR teams, and they have PR directors that work with the external teams. Go to your PR director, say, "Hey, I'm really looking to be more visible. I'm really looking to be more of a brand ambassador." They love that. I'm looking more to be a brand ambassador. I have some opinions and some thoughts that I think could highlight our company in a very positive way that shows our innovation and our leadership in the space. Can I start participating in our PR efforts? Then they'll introduce you to whoever is, and trust me, the PR team will love this, because sometimes it's like pulling teeth trying to get people to speak about things. And so then you'll probably have a little meet and greet, with whoever is running your PR. You'll put together some talking points that you feel comfortable speaking about, what kind of current events you like to weigh in on, and be part of that, or be part of the organization's push for PR. And at the same time, your personal brand will benefit from that also.
Oh my gosh, that is so powerful. Wow.
And your
Wow.
company's paying for it. So,
Yeah. Right, right. I mean, I guess that's such a better approach than I think, when I think like early day, like a decade ago, what would happen is there'd be like some company post or some tool that was like, hey, everybody go post XYZ thing that, eh, kind of felt like a bunch of advertisements over and over again that you were just pushing out through your own personal network. The thought of engaging your PR team is so much more powerful because what I honestly see, and I was guilty of this as well, is oftentimes, there wouldn't be much posting about anything until I had a job opening. And guess what? Here I am throwing out information about a job opening on my team, and I'm expecting the world of LinkedIn to know who I am, to know what kind of leader I am, to know,
yes.
what my business does, what our culture is like all of these things without any context because I haven't provided any of it.
Yeah.
Um, and I can only imagine like having access to the PR team and raising your hand to do that would be so flippin' powerful.
And media
Wow.
is such a great tool for recruitment. I mean,
Yeah.
especially younger generations, especially Gen Z, they want to know who you are and what your values are before they come and work for you. And LinkedIn in general now. I mean, if you are posting, like if your executive team is a cohesive unit and you're all getting to use your unique voices, but under the umbrella of PR for that company, it does help. It does benefit the company. It directly benefits you. And then you're also getting the attention of media that's on LinkedIn. That's how a lot of speaking engagements happen. That is how a lot of requests for op-eds happen, is that you start posting that commentary that's been published in Forbes or published in the AI Journal or published in Business Insider or whatever that is. And then, because before, most journalists were over at Twitter. That was like their place, that was their playground. And then when Twitter became X and X became controversial, most journalists, I would say a hefty amount of journalists, left X and they put all of their effort into LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So now you're not, it was never an echo chamber, but now it is like, it reflects back to you almost immediately. You start to see opportunities just left and right, and your company will love it. And as an entrepreneur, if you can do the same thing, you have a little bit more freedom. But again, those same opportunities will be reflected back to you.
Oh my gosh. I did not realize that the journalists have gravitated to LinkedIn. I
Yes,
just learned something new.
yes,
Thank
they're
you.
not fan of X, so they're over there.
Wow. That's a light bulb just went off for me. So, um, if I'm thinking about, starting to really become, you know, beyond getting access to PR, beyond, commentary, editorials, op-eds, things like that, for a busy sales leader or entrepreneur who's juggling so much every single day,
Sure.
what's really like a lean way to start to build like a category authority in a niche? I'm just going to go out on a limb. Like a lot of the people I know are in the B2B technology space.
Sure.
And so what would you say there?
So I do think that if, I am big like you, I am a big fan of LinkedIn. I'm also a big fan of Substack, and I think Substack and LinkedIn pair extremely well together. Substack is kind of, you can use it as a podcast, an email list, a blog, a LinkedIn tool all in one. It's glorious. Google loves it. ChatGPT loves it. It's showing up in search results like crazy.
Mm.
And so I think finding an outlet where you can put your experience, because you have to put that out somewhere. I also really believe that to cure the what am I going to say problem, which is
Yes.
also my problem, write down what you're saying during the day. Write down what you have said to your clients 7 times this week. Write down
Mm.
what you have said 7 times to prospects this week. Write down what you have told your team 14 times this week. Whatever you feel like you are always saying, whatever, don't let those conversations marinate in private. Take those conversations and make them accessible. And so that's how I kind of broke out of my, like, oh, what do I say on LinkedIn or what do I say on my Substack? Because I feel like when I'm face to face with you, I have no problem coming up with things to say.
Yeah.
And so I just started in like my Apple Notes, writing down what the topic of my conversation was and what little nuggets, what questions potential clients asked me, what was a common misunderstanding in my field. So in PR, there's a whole list of things that people usually misunderstand. So I was able to track those. Anything that I'm constantly having to explain or repeat, I'm using as public content.
Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. So amazing. And anyone can do that.
Yes, we just
Anyone can
all
do that.
repeat ourselves. We all have to repeat ourselves.
Yes. Yes. I'm at the end of every week, we're sitting here thinking like, why do I have to keep saying the same thing over and over again?
Yeah.
A question I just came to my mind. It was like what were one of the ones that I would ask my team. We'd be in a deal review, and I'd be sitting there, and it'd be a deal that would be, several $100,000. And I knew they were a privately held company because almost all of our clients and prospects were. And I would show up to the meeting and say, "Who's the private equity firm?" And I would, until my team had me ask this question 20 times, and it was deer in the headlights. The team was like, meanwhile, I'm Googling it. I'm like, who's the PR firm for XYZ, company?
Yeah.
And right, I'm like, okay, who's talking to our PR, the people that have a relationship with this private equity company that owns this business, and they're getting ready to spend $500,000 on our software. They might present that or discuss it with one of their board of directors, who's going to be somebody from the private equity firm. Right.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, it's things like that where you're not giving away any keys to the kingdom. It's a demonstration of authority. It's gem sharing with other colleagues who would look at you and say, "Oh my gosh, yes, I see that," and and resonate with that. I see a lot of effective when I look at the executives that are posting on a regular basis, and like the CEO of Zoom Info is doing a bang up job of posting, and there are several others. Um, but what I see happen a lot is they talk about, they don't name them, but they talk about customers
Sure.
and what customer challenges are they're seeing, and what they're solving for,
Yes.
which I think can really, yet again, serve a purpose of demonstration of expertise, a also a demonstration of an understanding of what's happening out there and what problems customers are facing. And that resonates with anybody who you might be connected with or want to be connected with.
Yes.
So, well, gosh, oh my goodness, Jenny, I feel like our time has flown so fast.
It's going so fast. I
This has
know.
been so incredible. And if you were going to leave our listeners with one action that they could take this week to
Okay.
start strengthening their own personal brand, what would
Okay.
that be?
So I would challenge our listeners to go a little bit a step further, and instead of strengthening their personal brand, strengthen their public narrative and reputation. So I always say that press, media, PR, the real purpose is to build a bridge of trust between your company and the public. And so, what I would challenge is that find a reporter that you believe writes the types of stories that you would like to be featured in. Find the headlines you're jealous of. Find the headlines that give you FOMO, where you're like, how this person get this? I'm doing that, or aggravate yourself just a little bit. We can also send, obviously we are very excited for everyone who's succeeding, but sometimes that little prick of FOMO, that little prick of jealousy is what you need to get started in a healthy way. So find the reporters that you would like to be covered by. Research them, read a few of their articles, do not reach out to them blind, and then write a short email introduction to them and don't ask for anything. Just say, I really enjoy your work. I enjoyed your latest article about X, Y, and Z. I'm so-and-so. This is what I do. I'm happy to help out if you're ever covering X, Y, and Z topics. Looking forward to staying in touch. And start your first reporter relationship there.
Wow. Oh, wow. How cool would that be? I'm going to try that. I'm doing that.
Yes.
I'm doing it.
Okay. Amazing.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to report back on what happens.
Yes, please do.
Well, so for those who are listening who want to connect with you and learn more about Pink Shark PR, where can they find you?
So definitely not on Instagram.
Right.
So LinkedIn is really the best. My inbox is open. I connect very freely there. So if you want to ask me a question or just connect, LinkedIn is the best place. And then my website is pinksharkpr.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I will put links to your LinkedIn profile and your website and even your Substack, because you gave that to me, for anybody who wants to go grab the show notes and get access to Jenny Beres and Pink Shark PR. What a pleasure it was to be with you today. Thank you for bringing the fun and the energy. I had a blast hanging out with you.
Likewise, thank you so much for hosting. I enjoyed every ounce of our conversation.
All right. Thank you. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining today. I know you're a super generous person, and a gift that you could give to someone you know, a friend, a colleague that you think would enjoy today's episode would be to send them a text, share a link to this episode with them. I do produce this show myself, and every time you share it, it helps the podcast grow and it supports the work that I do here. Also, if you happen to be a sales leader who is ready to take your next step up into a leader of leaders role, whether it's for a promotion or you're ready to go and get that new job at a new company, I'm talking about director roles, VP roles, even CRO roles in B2B tech, where you can earn $500,000 to $1 million or more. The workshop I'm giving is an hour-long workshop. It's totally free. You'll learn the process that I teach my clients on how to effectively position themselves, effectively network, and own their executive presence so they can land the job and get hired and promoted into these big sales leadership roles in B2B tech. If this sounds like you, come grab your spot. It's waiting for you at my website, amyevanscoaching.com, where you can unlock what's next for you.